a big lemon that's full of juice. We can do a very pleasurable activity, and that's like squeezing the lemon really hard, right? Or we can do a very boring activity, so it's like a slight squeeze. When I wake up in the morning and my dopamine circuitry is full of dopamine, even a slight squeeze will give us a fair amount of juice, right? When the lemon is full, I can squeeze it a little bit, I get a decent amount of juice. The problem is that if I squeeze it really hard when I first wake up in the morning, all of the juice runs out. So there's this weird stuff on the internet that kind of rots our brain. This stuff like Skibbity Toilet. I don't even know what that is. Like, I don't know if it's like a song or a dance move or a picture or a philosophy or religion. I don't even know what Skibbity Toilet is. And the problem is that the internet is getting filled with this kind of stuff. And we spend our times engaging with this stuff that like isn't a narrative, it's not a story, it's not a game. We just spend our time on the internet doing this weird crap. But the weirder thing is not just that we do it, it's that we can't stop. So today we're going to teach y'all a little bit about what the hell is going on and also hopefully give y'all a foundation to spend less time rotting your brain. So the first thing is the stuff that we're going to be talking about today is going to be like really fundamental stuff. We're going to be going to biological basics. And I know that may sound a little bit weird, but I think it's becoming increasingly important for you to understand how your brain actually works. Like, what is it for? Like, why do we have these organs called brains? Once we understand that, we'll understand what is going on with all this weird content on the internet. Which, by the way, is like a weird thing to call it, right? It's not a story, it's not a game, it's not a movie, it's content. It's some weird, lifeless, amorphous pile of whatever that is not like anywhere near an art form. So we have to understand what's going on in our brain, how this content is affecting our brain, and hopefully that will lay the foundation for us to understand how it actually works. So we're going to start with like really basic stuff, okay? Which is like, why do human beings have brains? So we have brains to help us survive. And the circuitry in our brain is designed to move us towards staying alive, right? And a lot of the stuff that we have in our brains is kind of designed for that reason. So a simple example is orgasm. So why do human beings or animals for that matter, why are they capable of orgasm? Why do we evolve this kind of particular circuit so that we can experience this maximal pleasure? It's because for the survival of the human race, we require sexual relations. And so without this fundamental thing, the human race would die out. Therefore, from an evolutionary standpoint, we develop this thing that gives us immense pleasure, arguably the most immense pleasure that you can get from life is orgasm. So we're going to say like, okay, this thing is really important for us. Therefore, we're going to maximize the pleasure circuitry around it to induce the right kind of behavior. And it's not just orgasm. So this is also why, for example, we develop social relationships. When you hug someone or when you receive a hug, you get this spurt of oxytocin. Oxytocin improves your anxiety, improves your mood, helps you form bonds, relaxes you a little bit, lowers your stress level. And why is that? It's because when human beings hug each other, it forms bond with them, and this sort of helps them increase their survival chances. Okay, so this is the thing. The brain is all designed to help us survive. Even the negative things that we experience, like hunger and thirst, why are they negative? It's because the brain is sending a signal, hey, this thing is against our survival. This thing, unless we fix this problem, we will die like drinking water. Therefore, I'm going to make this experience of dehydration unpleasant. So our brain wants to reward particular experiences that improve survival and punish us for particular experiences that decrease survival. Simple enough, right? Now here's the problem. A lot of people out there have figured out how to, in isolated ways, activate some of these circuits in our brain without actually providing us with the full benefit of what that circuit is for. Now, I recognize that's kind of long, so I'll give you a simple analogy, right? So there's a difference between calories and nutrition, right? So one of them is sure it's like energy and fuel. It's a partial way to say, well, I don't eat calories, just plain calories, we can eat like a candy bar or a Twinkie. But that's very different from broccoli. Now, our taste buds and our GI system and even our brain has started to send rewarding signals to us when we eat calorically dense food because it sort of correlates with survival. So someone came along and like, hey, I have a great idea. Let's make a candy bar. And with a candy bar, what we're going to get is a maximum activation of this particular circuit of the brain. But we're not including nutrition, right? So what happens if you eat candy bars all day? You get a bunch of calories and you'll get arguably a bunch of pleasure, but you won't get the full complete experience of nutrition. If you eat a bunch of candy bars, you'll develop obesity, you'll develop insulin resistance, you'll develop vascular complications, you'll literally develop things like numbness in your fingertips and toes, which results in like wound healing problems and all of these kinds of problems. So this is the key thing that we also need to understand about these circuits and when we inappropriately activate them. Anytime you inappropriately or artificially activate a circuit, it causes problems in the human body. And today what we're going to do is go over a couple of examples of those and really sort of highlight why brain rot is so devastating and so addictive. Hey y'all, if you're interested in applying some of the principles that we discussed to your life to actually the biggest problem with calories instead of nutrition is that it destroys our hunger. So remember, hunger is used to help us survive. So when I fill up on candy bars, I no longer feel hungry. This is the driving force for like health and survival and arguably happiness. And what's going on the internet is we have a bunch of people who are experimenting with stuff, right? And this is the problem with the internet is that like the most brain rotting stuff is what rises to the top because we have this Darwinian experience of, okay, there's like a bazillion TikToks out there or YouTube shorts or whatever, right? Instagram reels or we're platform agnostic, okay? We have 1,000 of these things. And which one do you see? You see the one that rots your brain the most because this content is the stuff that activates certain parts of your brain. So there's certain content that will be funny, but will also like activate your empathic circuitry and will also make you feel like pity for someone else and it engages you in lots of ways. We also know that there's stuff like rage bait, right? And when we watch rage bait, what we see is increases in heart rate, we see increases in blood pressure. But when we see increases in heart rate and blood pressure without things like physical exercise, that actually damages our body. And we'll show you a couple papers about that later. So this is a basic problem with the brain rotting stuff, right? So first of all, there's this Darwinian evolutionary kind of selection for the most brain rotting stuff, and the most brain rotting stuff actually activates a number of different circuits, but only partially. And once we start to activate these circuits in a partial way, the biggest problem is that once we activate the circuit, the drive to actually do something healthy disappears. When I eat a candy bar, I no longer want to eat broccoli. So let's run through a couple of simple examples of why this stuff is so unhealthy for us. So everyone knows that dopamine is kind of like this pleasure chemical. We have this part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, which anytime we do something pleasurable, it releases a spurt of dopamine. Now, we have a really good video about, we've got a couple of good videos about dopamine. Y'all can definitely check those out, but I'm going to kind of give y'all a quick rundown of one of the really important points here. So when we wake up in the morning, our dopamine circuitry is like a fresh lemon, okay? So big lemon that's full of juice. Now, there are two kinds of activities that we can do. We can do a very pleasurable activity like playing a video game, and that's like squeezing the lemon really hard, right? So the more pleasurable the activity is, the harder the squeeze. Or we can do a very boring activity like sorting our mail or going through our mail or doing some kind of paperwork. Now, this is not a very pleasurable activity, so it's like a slight squeeze. Now, here's the issue. When I wake up in the morning and my dopamine circuitry is full of dopamine, even a slight squeeze will give us a fair amount of juice, right? When the lemon is full, I can squeeze it a little bit, I get a decent amount of juice. The problem is that if I squeeze it really hard when I first wake up in the morning, all of the juice runs out. And then if I try to do a slight squeeze, nothing actually gets the juice out. I need to squeeze very, very, very hard. So this is what we tend to find if you look at, so I work with a lot of people who are, addicted to video games, and this is what we tend to find. If you play a video game in the first couple hours of the morning, the reward that you get from doing work that is important to you actually declines drastically. We essentially empty our dopamine through a video game, and then there's no dopamine left to give us a sense of reward for studying or going through the mail or organizing our bookshelf or whatever. The flip side is that if you wake up first thing in the morning and you start to do work, you're squeezing out, you get some degree of positive reinforcement, behavioral reinforcement, and pleasure. And then even after you're done doing some amount of work, then you can squeeze the lemon, right? So we squeeze out half of the juice by doing not very fun things, and then we can squeeze really hard by playing a video game at the end of the day, and we still have fun. So this is the problem with brain rot. Is all these activities that we do squeeze all the dopamine out, and then they reduce our ability to experience pleasure from other things. When you watch shorts for about 3 hours, nothing else feels engaging, right? It's not fun to read a book. It's not fun to hang out with other people. There's no amount of pleasure that we experience from work. And I see this all the time where people are like, oh, am I supposed to like work for 8 hours a day and then commute and then work out and do laundry like this is what my life is for the next 30 years? And I empathize with that. We want life to be more than that. But oftentimes when I'm stunned by my work people in my office who are talking about how terrible life is, I'll ask them one really simple thing. Hey, can I see your phone for a second? And I'll flip it open and I'll look at their average screen time usage, right? I'll tell them, hey, can we just like check out what your screen time usage is per day? And I'm shocked because it's usually about 4.5 hours at the minimum, up to about 6 hours a day, which is sort of the national average in the United States. And so it's not just that our life is like empty, it's that we are engaging with things, we are sort of eating so many calories without getting nutrition that it messes up the way that our brain circuitry works. So let's take another example, relationships and socialization. So once again, the internet offers us an opportunity to scratch certain parts of our brain, but not really do the whole thing. And anytime you get a partial activation of the brain, this results in problems down the line. So there's simple things like I can socialize on the internet, right? So I'm going to talk to my friends, and I'm someone who socializes on the internet. I have friends that I've been gaming with for years that I've never met in real life. I consider them my real friends. I started playing StarCraft with someone when I was 15 years old, or maybe even 14. That the first time I met them was at my wedding. So I'm not one of these people who's like, oh my God, internet relationships are fake. They are real. They can be very positive in many ways. And they are incomplete. And they're a little bit closer to calories than nutrition. Because there's some things that you can't do over an internet relationship. You can never receive a hug. You can never have physical contact. And these kinds of things, when we talk about the circuitry of human relationships, these things are very beneficial for us, right? We already talked about oxytocin. Anytime I hug someone, I get sort of oxytocin. Reduces my stress, improves my mood, reduces my anxiety, reduces my inflammation. Like my whole body inflammation goes down with something like oxytocin. So what we see with all of these like internet relationships is number one, and then especially on the Brainrot side, we see things like parasocial relationships. And this is part of the reason why some of these platforms like Twitch and OnlyFans become so popular. Because what's starting to happen is people are figuring out how to scratch more of that itch. And more of the itch that they scratch, the more addicted you will become. So let's use a simple example like OnlyFans. So it used to be that pornography would just activate your sensory receptors and sort of activate your dopaminergic circuitry, like that's it, right? So we're seeing these naked people doing things that are sexual, we feel somewhat aroused, and then maybe there's some amount of masturbation or orgasm associated with it, which is some amount of dopamine, and that's kind of how it was. But the issue is that with pornography, you couldn't have a relationship with this person, right? You were a consumer, they're filming something, right? It's a film that you're watching or whatever. And then someone invented OnlyFans. And with OnlyFans, now you can have interaction. You can say to them, good morning, and they can say back to you, good morning. You can even create some degree of a transactional relationship or some degree of reciprocity. You send them money, they make a special video just for you. And so if we look at what is this actually doing, it is starting to activate additional parts of our brain. The problem is when we start to do this activation, it's not actually like we're moving from Twinkies or candy bars to broccoli. We're actually just eating Twinkies for more parts of our brain. Now there is this fake level of social interaction because when you're getting a DM from an OnlyFans creator, chances are it's some 45 balding dude who's like been hired by the OnlyFans creator to make you feel special. It is highly unlikely that it's the OnlyFans creator themselves. And even if you do this kind of stuff, right? So even if you're directly interacting with them, I don't know that, I've never heard of a case of someone spending a ton of money on an OnlyFans creator and then actually forming a real relationship with them. But this is the way that people feel, right? They think, okay, like this person really does get me. This person has a relationship. This person cares about me a lot. And why do we feel that way? We feel that way because these parasocial platforms engage more circuits of our brain. And once again, the real problem with this stuff is that it decreases our drive to engage in real relationships. And I've even seen or heard and worked with people who have horror stories of ruining their real life relationship because of a relationship with an OnlyFans creator. So this is the core problem with why we're rotting our brains. People are figuring out how to artificially activate these various circuits. And the more circuits that they activate, the more we get pulled into it, right? Because remember, all these circuits evolved to drive us towards survival. So when our brain gets this stuff, it's like, hey, this is good. This is great. We like this. Candy bars are awesome. We're getting a bunch of calories. This increases our survival. The problem is that it costs us so much. The first thing that it costs us is it reduces our motivation. It tanks our motivation to actually build the real thing. And I work with so many people who have so much social anxiety that they'll turn to online relationships because they feel safer over there. And there can be good things associated with that. We're not against online relationships. But the problem is that it can engender a dependence on that online interaction. And specifically with social anxiety, the more online time you spend, the more some circuits of your brain start to atrophy. Right? So we'll see things like circuits related to body language, tones, these like interpersonal communication skills start to weaken when all you're doing is DMing people or sending voice chats. Right? There's no like how much there's no like understanding of like eye contact, for example. And so I see a lot of people trying to socialize, and since they don't have practice with eye contact, they don't know how to do eye contact properly. And since they don't know how to do eye contact properly, one of two things happens. Either they get called a creep because their eye contact is really intense and they don't look away often enough, or the people like are mentally checked out because they're not eye contact and they're always kind of looking over here, looking over here, eye contact. So these eye contact circuits require somebody to be practiced, and if they're out of practice, we end up feeling incredibly awkward. Then what happens? I try to go socialize. And since I've been on this diet of candy bars this whole time, when I socialize, people call me a creep, or they call me awkward, or I feel awkward. And then it's very hard for me to socialize again. So this is literally what's happening. As we're activating our circuits, we are sort of losing the capacity to engage normally. We're losing the capacity to engage in like romantic relationships, right? Because we're eating this internet diet of like this weird, toxic, whatever, like pink pill, red pill, whatever kind of stuff, right? We have all these ideas about relationships, but we're not spending a whole lot of time in relationships. We have all this dopaminergic crap that we're consuming that messes with our behavioral reinforcement and motivational circuitry so we don't feel like doing anything. We have all of these problems with simple things like socialization and anxiety, all that kind of stuff. But that's not the end of it. So I was looking at a bunch of research. I figured out what's the cost of spending time on the internet or playing video games. And we'll just show you a couple of papers. This is wild, okay? Right? So enhancement of allergic skin wheel response in patients with atopic eczema dermatitis syndrome by playing video games or by frequently reading mobile phone. So this is a study that looks at like literally like how video games and reading mobile phone will make your allergic skin responses worse. So if you have atopic disease like asthma, eczema, these things will get worse when you actually play video games. So physiologic responses playing video games. This is another paper that kind of looks at these cardiovascular things. So when we play video games, we'll do things like we'll see increases in heart rate, cellular biological relations. There's no associated with exercise. So many exercises, all these things. The problem is that like, when our physiology gets stressed in this way and we're not exercising, it actually causes damage. So we see this like everywhere. So it turns out that there's like four cases of people have formed blood vessels. Sometimes human beings have these things called blood vessels. And sometimes the blood gets like the brain. And then it's something called stroke. And when you have a stroke, there's part of your brain, there's a brain, is blocked off by clot. And when the clot blocks off a blood vessel, all the tissue downstream of the blood gets fed by that blood vessel actually gets bled more, and then that tissue dies. So this is normally I'm seeing older people, like so strokes and blood vessels, people like 60 plus, 70 plus, I'm in the field. The majority of blood vessels are like incarnate age. Now what's great is as we play these doing games in our house all day, we have young people who are developing blood vessels and things like strokes. This is insane, right? This is not what we use to be. Now it's also related between the incorporation of the nervous system and development of blood vessels. All that's really, we also see a problem with like insulin resistance really damage your brain. So this is every year we're seeing a lot of inflammation. So these are things that kind of related to insulin and activates some things like autoimmunities. This is has to do with our feeling of anxiety, insulin, and all that things. These are all indicators of our energy levels, our feeling of full inflammation and insulin resistance. And insulin resistance leads to things like diabetes. Forget about forming bonds. Forget about dopamine. There are very real health effects from engaging with this brain rotting content. And so the question is like, what do we do about this, right? How do we stop? How do we break this cycle? And this is the real problem, is like, this is the reason it's so important, is because as we consume this weird content, right, this weird like AI generated, like bot farm, rage bait inducing crap, the problem is that it destroys our motivation to actually like build our lives. Because what happens is they offer us such a cheap and easy way to get mentally satisfied. The problem is they literally, like, not literally, I guess, no, I think I can say literally, right? Because it induces inflammation, it induces thromboembolic events, it induces insulin resistance. All of these things are messing us up and then detract from our ability to actually improve our lives. And that's the real problem. So what do we do about this? So the short answer is, I don't know. Right? So this stuff is so new that I don't have a very simple, like, okay, just do this, 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 and this. But here's what I would kind of say. Here's when I work with people, this is kind of what I focus on. The first thing is that understand that there is a difference between calories and nutrition, and take a look at your life and start to ask yourself, what am I really getting from this? What direction is this stuff moving me in? Now, I know that everyone sort of says like, oh yeah, like obviously I should play less video games. Obviously I should spend less time on my screen, but I just don't do that. And then the question becomes why? Because when I work with people, it's not like there's a generic answer. This is where like the reason I love doing individual work is because people have individual solutions. And so I really start with sort of thinking a little bit about, what do you get from doing this? And don't say I don't get anything, it's a waste. That's incorrect. I wrote a book about like parenting kids with video game addiction. And one of the key things that I sort of found when it comes to addiction is you have to understand what is driving the addiction. Why are we engaging in this behavior? What am I really getting out of this? And then the real way to get off of this brain rot is to really think about, okay, what am I getting out of this? And how can I get this outside of the brain rot content consuming OnlyFans video game kind of world? Like, how can I get this outside of that? And here's what I tend to find when I work with people is that when you start to work on getting it outside from wherever the brain rot content is, it actually reduces your dependence on the brain rot. A simple way to put it is if I eat a bowl of broccoli, my desire for a candy bar will actually decrease, right? So this is what's really cool is we can use the same principle of candy bar, if I eat a candy bar, I don't eat broccoli. The opposite is also true. If I start to eat broccoli, I don't feel like having a candy bar. If I'm dehydrated and I drink water, my desire for soda will naturally go down, okay? So this is where what we tend to work on here at Healthy Gamer is building a life that is worth living. So take one or two things, start very, very small, take one or two things and really think about, okay, what am I getting from this kind of thing? Is it social interaction? Is it a sense of joy? Is it a sense of accomplishment? What is it? And try to do those things as early in the day as possible. It can be something as simple as food, right? So even if I'm like spending 3 hours on the internet and then I'm starving and then I order a pizza or like microwave something, it can be something as simple as eating something. So steam some broccoli and eat it. Try to create whatever you can that sort of gets you to satisfy some nutritional need in yourself. That's the first thing. Second thing we really want to focus on is inflammation. And the third thing we want to focus on is sleep. So anytime I'm working with someone, what I tend to find is that there's a very efficient path of like reducing their inflammatory burden. So the second thing that we're going to focus on is inflammation. Now this sounds kind of weird, right? Because what does inflammation have to do with this? So all of these activities, not all, but the majority of these activities will increase our inflammatory burden. Now the problem is that inflammation causes all kinds of downstream effects that make it really hard for us to stop the brain rot activities. So inflammation has been associated with depression. Inflammation is common in things like anxiety. Inflammation also makes it hard for us to sleep. So I see this cycle when I work with people where like they have a high inflammatory burden. It's hard for them to sleep. So when they wake up in the morning, their frontal lobes and their willpower is actually exhausted. A crappy night of sleep means that you have very little willpower the next day, which then makes it very hard to resist all of this brain rotting activity. So what I tend to do, and then it becomes like an impossible cycle, right? So if I can't sleep, then I have no willpower. If I have no willpower, I can't resist the activity. If I can't resist the activity, I can't sleep, right? Because then I stay awake all night. I stay awake way too late, spending time on the internet or whatever. So how do you break the cycle? It's really interesting, but oftentimes you have to kind of work tangentially. So try to reduce your inflammatory burden as much as possible. So that means a couple servings of fresh fruits and vegetables a day. There are some supplements and things like that that have been shown to use inflammatory burdens. Strongly recommend that you'll talk to your doctors about things like that. But even things like fish oil and omega-3 and stuff like that has been shown to reduce inflammation, can be healthy for your heart. So do whatever you can to reduce your inflammation. Another thing that's really good at reducing inflammation is actually exercise. And you can even do something like go for a walk for like 30 minutes. The cool thing about going for a walk is it sort of activates your cardiovascular system, creates an energy expenditure, causes you to do things like sweat. And then the cool thing about exercise is as you exercise, you will start to crave healthier foods. So your desire for drinking water will actually increase the more that you exercise. So anti-inflammatory diet and exercise, I'd say spend 1 hour a day. That's it, right? So we're going to do some activity at the beginning that we find nutritious. And then we're going to exercise for 30 minutes and cook yourself some kind of healthy meal. And I know it sounds like, but how does that tackle the brain rot? This is the key thing that I want y'all to understand. You need to leverage your physiology, right? You need to get your physiology working for you instead of working against you. And when we have a brain rot lifestyle, when we have a sedentary lifestyle, our cravings for water actually decrease. Our desire for soda can increase because we have insulin resistance. So, we need more sugar to overcome that insulin resistance. So a lot of things can start to turn around. The last thing that I would strongly recommend if you're stuck in this brain rot lifestyle is a decent night's sleep. So I recommend things like yoga nidra about 1 hour before you go to bed. You can take things like melatonin and stuff. That's definitely something to talk to your doctor about. But this is the kind of thing where getting a good night's sleep is about how you spend your day. We have a whole video about that hopefully will help you all out quite a bit. And this is sort of how we break free from the cycle. So it's kind of scary, but the stuff that rots our brain is actually incredibly addictive. And the reason that it's incredibly addictive is because people have figured out how to hyperactivate certain circuits of our brain that in the past helped us to survive. Which means that since these circuits were survival oriented, anytime we activate them, we have a very strong behavioral reinforcement to engage with it again. The biggest problem with activating these circuits isn't even the direct damage that they do. It's actually that it destroys our motivation to satisfy those circuits in the way that they're supposed to be satisfied, in a way that is way healthier. And so that reduces our motivation to actually put our lives together. So I hope that this video has been helpful for y'all. I know it's incredibly challenging. And please let us know, for what we said today, what works, what doesn't work, what are the additional challenges that y'all run into, and let us know because this is not the last video that we're going to make on Brainrot. Hey y'all.